Good afternoon. My name is Chris Adlam. I'm here with Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm pleased to be joined by Max Gill, a graphic designer for DesignWorks this afternoon. Hello, Max.
Hi, man. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. Thank you for finding the time to join us this afternoon.
No, of course.
Yeah, I guess my opening question would really be, tell us a little bit about DesignWorks.
Hi everyone. I'm Max. I'm as said, I'm a graphic designer and I work in East London for a company called DesignWorks, and we work with kind of like an array of clients from people like Amazon to some different sports brands, and and we kind of our work is quite heavily focused around branding, like having close relationships with our clients, kind of elevate their brands, bring new exciting ideas out into the world. And yeah, we run a tight ship, but it's super exciting, and it keeps me busy every single day, and we just constantly strive to create great work to put out there in the world.
That's fantastic, and cheers for, like I said, a brief sort of touch on the company. Like, this may sound like a silly question, but if someone mentioned to me about being a graphic designer, it's one of those job titles where I'd probably think, I think I know what a graphic designer does, but there's probably a lot under that umbrella. So, do you want to give us maybe a brief touch on sort of what the kind of things graphic designers can do in comparison to, exactly what you do?
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, so I think like one of the things is being like called like a graphic designer is there's so many different elements to that, like on a day to day. I think most people just think we sit and design logos all day, and we'd all love to do that, but like realistically, that's not the reality. So to be honest with you, like a graphic designer, it's a lot of like ideation and a lot of internal thought and creative process of solving problems. It's a real problem solving thing. So for example, you might have a client or a person come to you and say, we've got this concept, or we've got an idea, or we've just started something, and we need to put ourselves out there in the world. And your job is to kind of go, okay, well, how do they talk to their audience? What kind of language are they going to use? How do they visually represent? And you almost build like a bit of a character. It's like if you was to build a person around the company. We sometimes do it with, I've done it over the years with clients who go, if your company was a person, who would they be?
Okay.
And normally we typically say famous people because people know, different famous people. And it's a real good starting point because you kind of get then a bit of like a visual look, you get a bit of personality, you get the way to handle situations. And it sounds a strange tactic, but then you can kind of then tailor that creatively to build material and put out to the world. And it's all problem solving, like relationship building. So my job, like specifically as a designer, is to take, those little nuggets and ideas that people want, and to visually build brand languages, brand systems, and how that sits in the world, whether that's digitally, whether that's on print platforms. There's so many different outputs now, and it's kind of, I'm the guy who pulls that all in and like spurs it out visually. So that's what graphic design really is to me. It's not one lane, it's multiple things, but just exciting for all the possibilities you can create.
That's amazing, and I love that the people turning their companies into celebrities. To give you an idea, can we build up on that anymore? Are you able to give us an example of maybe a celebrity you've been told as a company, and how you would then, as a graphic designer, would translate that? What would you take from the celebrity they suggest?
Yeah, so I think like over the times I've had, I mean, it depends on the company. I've had a couple of rappers before. I don't know if people have heard. Well, I presume most people know there's a rapper called like Tyler the Creator. I've had Kanye West. I've had a bit more folk kind of like Dolly Parton-esque.
Okay.
So it kind of flips. A lot of people weirdly go into music. I think because music in itself is like a bit of an art. Do you know what I mean? What gets put out there, so they feel like they can relate to that in some way. But then we've had like actors like Michael Fassbender and other people, and so say for example, like I think one of the companies where I had Kanye West for an example. Obviously, Kanye West is quite a controversial character nowadays, but at the time it was a little bit more. He was quite cool. He was very street. He went against the norm. He wasn't afraid to say what he wanted. Like visually as well, he carried a bit of swag. The way he spoke, if you listen to him back in the day, it's very like short. It's very short statements. He doesn't go into a lot of deep, rambled conversations. So for us, that was great because like we could build a brand language around that. So like the kind of statements the company put out to the world were really short and concise. And then also you work out, you go, okay, well, in a whole, who does Kanye speak to and who does his music speak to? You know, and most of the time you'll find it's a little bit more male dominant. I can't say statistically that's correct, but I would gather that's probably more where you lean, and perhaps like a little bit younger. So you start to look maybe, okay, everyone probably can appreciate his music, but maybe your under 30s are the ones who really like tune into it. So just by giving that character, we start to be able to pick all these different things out. And yeah, we got the opportunity to build like a bit of language around it, which was really exciting.
That's amazing, and I find it really interesting how, as I say, just from someone mentioning, one celebrity name, how you can pluck all of these individual details out of it, and all of these sort of buzzwords and theme that can be pulled from it, to inspire you, and that's really interesting. And it comes across as very clear that creativity is a big sort of trait and a big characteristic to be a graphic designer. And I think you've touched, obviously, that communication has to be up there as well. But what other sort of personality traits would you say are really useful in being a graphic designer?
I mean, I think one of the things I've always like battled with for like I've done it for 7-8 years now, so in the grand scheme of things I'm still quite new, because you have people who've been in it for 40-50 years and run global companies, but I think for me, like, I've done my fair share of over 7 years. I've done 7 agencies, which sounds like quite a lot of different agencies over a short span of time, but I think like throughout that I've kind of had the opportunity to learn different aspects what make up being a designer. Do you know what I mean? Because you take the good and bad from each job. And I think one thing that you have, a lot of people have said to me now, they go, you're really lucky to be in the position you're in, which I don't disagree with, but I have my own equation for luck.
Okay.
Which is, for me, luck equals preparation and
Yeah.
determination. They're the two things that make up luck, is preparation and determination. So I think one thing you have to have as a character skill to be a designer is you have to be determined to go, okay, if I send out 100 job applications and I get nothing, I keep going. And that determination will lead you into the preparation, because obviously if you're putting yourself out there and constantly going, you're constantly prepping yourself for situations. And it takes one moment for it just to click. And like my early days when trying to prove, going from being a shoe salesman at JD Sports to trying to convince someone why I can be a junior graphic designer, is such a leap. But I was constantly putting myself out there. I was determined to get in it. And because I was constantly getting in front of people, I was always prepared for a moment. And then when that moment came, I mean, honestly, I think I'm not exaggerating. I probably sent out 50 to 75 emails to agencies across the country and maybe got 3 back. And then 2 I lost, but 1 I got through, So you have to have like that core desire for it. I think it's the only fundamental, because from a skill perspective, you can learn it. I didn't go to university. I did college, I did graphic design college, and then I said like, no, I'm going to go straight into the industry, and luckily a month or 2 after I went straight in. But I'm not sitting here as like, oh, I'm a super skilled, naturally born talented artist. Like, I'm not that. But one thing that has got me into the industry is, one, being a human being, which I think a lot of people struggle to be now, because of the digital world, we forget how to communicate with people one-to-one and build relationships. So I think just being a human, I think being determined and being prepared. And for me, if you all those 3, it could take a week, it could take 2 years. But if you want it enough, you'll do it. So that's my only base foundation. The skills will come into that. You'll be surrounded by other creatives once you get into it. You've got YouTube, you've got everything. You will learn as you go along, because you'll get thrown in uncomfortable situations where you have to learn. So that's my core foundation. Just channel a focus, be determined, and be a nice person.
No, that's some brilliant core pieces of advice there. I completely agree with all of those. And I mean, you've touched a little bit on your own journey there and the preparation that maybe someone who, as I say, wants to have a career in graphic design will have to go through. You know, what kind of things? So if someone is getting their applications out there or they've got an interest in getting into the field, is there any kind of hobbies or things in their spare time or things they can be doing, as I say, that will sort of help boost their chances, as you say, when they do get that opportunity?
Yeah, of course. So I think like to put yourself in the best position, I think you need to have a slight understanding of the industry to a certain degree. I think I spent a lot of my own time, and I mean almost 7 nights a week outside of working at retail, creating work. And don't get me wrong, it was terrible. It was dreadful work. I still have a portfolio from back in like 2015, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. But you have to constantly create, because for me, like, design isn't a 9 to 5. It almost becomes a part of you, and it's a lifestyle. You sometimes have to work unsociable hours. You work weekends. You have to leave the country to go to different places, you know. So you have to be willing to put time in out and around the normal working hours. So for me, I think people who want to create the best chance themselves, I think you need to find visually what you're interested in. And I think for me, the best way to, as you can see, I have a lot of books, you know. I would get a lot of design books, start to find artists and that who inspire you. They don't, I think a lot of people feel like they have to channel on graphic designers for inspiration. You don't. Like, I actually think you narrow your ability to create new ideas if you look at just graphic designers. So for me personally, like, I read about like artists in general, but then I watch like movies, I look at old magazines, like, and those things are bringing me new ideas constantly outside of the design world, and then you get to bring them in. So I think new people just need to study a little bit on the outside, try some things. You're going to create terrible work. I still make bad work now, but it's part of the process. And what you'll do is, by creating constant work, you'll almost lower that fear of putting yourself out there, and you'll get better at creating ideas, because once you put it out there, more people will comment and they go, I think you should do this next time, that you've taken a little step. So it's all about that time outside. At the start, it's crucial to just to make. That's all you have to do, is just create stuff you like. And I promise someone will bite at it at one point. It might take a while, but it does happen.
No, that's brilliant, and I love the way you're sort of talking about it. As I say, as a process, as sort of something you were continuously developing, you know, taking on, as I say, all these influences from all over places. I think that's a really good way to look at it, rather than just, oh, I'm a graphic designer now. Oh, you know, I don't need to grow or gain these skills. That's really good. And as I say, previously you've touched a little bit on some of the challenges that sort of you faced, and that, you know, anyone wanting to get into a role as a graphic designer might face. What are the rewards? So when you have a good day, when, you know, maybe you've produced a really good piece of work or something like that, you know, I say, what are the rewards of being a graphic designer?
I mean, it's endless, because for me, it's the feeling of just putting stuff out there into the world, and whether that changes one person's day or opinion on something or a million, it's the greatest feeling to know you've had some sort of influence in the world. So I've worked from agencies down to very local level when I was starting, you know, in, like, I'm from Norfolk originally, so like in Norfolk I worked with, you know, a guy who had maybe 2 employees, had a cool little concept, you know, and it didn't go, like, his company's not global, but I managed to help him on a journey at a very local level. But then I've been so lucky now with, you know, some of the clients I've recently worked on and get to work on, you know, it influences billions of people, you know, and knowing I had a part to play in that is a real reward. And I think what you then you almost get like addicted to it, because it sounds a little cliche, but anything kind of becomes possible. You know, you can always put new ideas out into the world. Don't get me wrong, 99% of them can be terrible. But like, the good thing is, if by putting like terrible ideas out there as well, you know sometimes what to avoid, and you start to create a path. You start to like go, well, this is rubbish, that's rubbish, and you start to channel through. And once you get to that end goal where you've gone through a process, it's super rewarding. And I mean, obviously you can talk about like the emotional value, but you know, there's other things of perks. You get to meet super talented people. You have experiences like you wouldn't think you would have in a regular job. You know, I've been lucky to work abroad with my job. I've thrown and worked with influencer parties. I've been to fancy events. You know, I work in a cool studio. Everyone drinks lattes, and if that's your thing, like that's how it is. You know, it is that world though. Once you get into it, and if that's something that you like, that I guess that becomes a reward. But for me, it's not about the physical things. It's about the emotional reward of feeling like, even if it's on the smallest level, like in the industry, I've contributed to it in some form. And I think that's what everyone should make their focus, because I think that's what carries you through your career, because you'll never lose that. You know, studios will change their vibe and their rules and, you know, the people you work with. But if you can always channel on just making a little difference in the industry, I think you'll thrive through your career.
I think that's a great piece of advice. And as you say, employers will change, studios will change, things will change around you. But if you've got that core passion about what you're doing and that reason why you're doing it, you know, that's going to, as you say, carry you through your career. And I think that's a
Absolutely
brilliant piece of advice. And my final question, really, just to sort of wrap things up, and I've asked this to all the employers that I've had talks with, and it's mainly, if you could go back and sort of speak to, say Max, who was working at JD Sports, or, you know, sort of your younger self, and you give yourself a piece of career advice, you know, what would that be?
It's gonna sound a weird one, but it would be care less, because I think when I started, like I got into it really when I was kind of 16, I think. Well, like through college, I think I loved art before, but then getting into like digital design and graphic design was kind of 16 at college. And I think it's a blessing and a curse really, because I put so much emotional stress on myself to constantly create 24/7. And I guess that sounds like contradicts what I said of like, oh, you must always create. But I think you create on your time. Do you know what I mean? Where I think when I was younger, it was like non-negotiable. If I wasn't in the mood, I was like, you have to make at least 4 hours per night. You know, it become really like relentless. And I think, honestly, I did it for maybe like 4 years.
Wow.
Of just battering myself. And I think emotionally, I don't know if I'd say like it damaged me, but I think I become a bit tuned out to real world. And when you channel yourself just into complete and internal chaos of having to be creative all the time, I think you lose touch with reality a little bit. And I think I was very influenced by like social media as well, and what other people were doing. I think like comparison, I was always like, I want to be like this person, or I want to be like that person. It was never like, yeah, but who am I? Do you know what I mean? Like recently, which is unusual for someone in the digital world, I got rid of all my social media. I have nothing anymore. Instagram, nothing. And I've never felt so much clarity in ideas and feeling confident in myself. So I think if I could go back, I would just say, mate, chill out. Like, work hard and keep the determination, keep the goal and the focus. But like, if you're not feeling it one day, take a day off, take more breaks, because having breaks and stepping outside of it will help bring clarity and bring in new ideas. So I think that's what I would do, and maybe regain a bit of my early youth of not stressing about being a creative. But having said that, I can't go back and say if I didn't do that, I would now be in the position I'm in. So, but I would rather stress less for sure.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I think that's a lovely piece of advice to end on. And again, thank you, Max, for finding the time to talk to me this afternoon.
No, mate, super appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.